We are pleased to present the Spirituality in Chinese Medicine seminar. Please welcome Alex Tiberi.
Good morning. It's, I guess, always the standard when you begin these kind of presentations to sort of introduce yourself, and what you're doing, I think, is establishing the argument of authority, right? Oh, I have so much background, and this is where I've studied, and blah, blah. So it makes it sound important. What you're going to say has some relevance. That's the standard. But I think more important, particularly for a talk like this, where we're going to start with an issue of spirituality in Chinese medicine, more important is to understand something about the nature of the lecturer than some background. And we'll get to my background in a minute. I think it's important with all presentations, particularly in an art like Chinese medicine, to realize that the teacher can never tell you something that's true. They can only tell you their own delusions about how things are. And then you have to see how that harmonizes with your worldview and what might be useful about their delusional view. This was particularly driven home to me some years ago. I was in the Jade Buddha Temple in Shanghai, maybe 25 years ago or so, and I was looking. They had, you know, back in the Cultural Revolution, they were destroying a lot of the temples, but Zhou Enlai, the premier of China at that time, had some troops at his disposal and managed to dispatch them to what he thought were very culturally relevant sites to sort of protect them from the Red Guard. You know, so Mao was doing his thing, struggling with others in the government, releasing the Red Guard, and Zhou Enlai was sort of in the background. Oh, I can protect this and I can protect that. And one of the things he protected was the Jade Buddha Temple in Shanghai. I think, you know, we can wonder his motives, but maybe because he thought it would be a good tourist site later, which in fact it turned out to be. But it had one of the few places that has a complete collection of the Buddha Sutras. And so I was in the sutra room there, and it's, you know, a big wall of old texts, and I'm sort of looking at it and just sort of in wonder that it's such an interesting display. And this old monk came in, and he was kind of surprised because to see a foreigner in there wasn't so common 25 years ago or so. And so he said something to me which I didn't understand. And I had a Chinese friend around. I got him to see if he could get what he was saying, and he didn't get it either. Turns out he was speaking some very minor dialect. He had been in the monastery since childhood, never learned to speak Mandarin, you know, the kind of common dialect. And so we had to get another monk in there who could speak that dialect to sort of, so we were going through these stages of translation. It turns out what he was saying to me as he pointed to all this stuff was, it's all lies. You know? And so then, of course, this had to engender a discussion. And the point came that there was no true spiritual teaching. In fact, what spiritual teachings were ways to balance people's misapprehension that was causing them some kind of discomfort, some kind of suffering, was preventing them from really fully realizing themselves. And so all the teachings were ways, and I thought this is exactly what Chinese medicine is, right? We don't say there is a correct treatment. The correct treatment is the one that balances the person's condition. Some people have a more cold yin condition, therefore they need yang tonification. It's going to be a totally different treatment than the person with heat, right? And it's the same way with spiritual teaching in that tradition. You're saying something not because it's true, but because it balances the person's difficulty in some way. There is a Buddhist saying that's, I think, kind of relevant to that these teachings are therefore more true than facts. You know, they're not basic facts. They're something useful, and so as I go to present, I have my things that make my life and my perspective, and those things are more true than facts for me, but they may or may not be for you. You have to see, because I'm basically a clinician, so you have to see how are these things relevant to the way you like to interact with your patients. How are they useful to you in then balancing your patient's condition to help them actualize themselves? As I say, as we begin this, it's important to get a sense of who that teacher is. And I think you can learn that a lot from just observing them. I taught a seminar, and it's a story that it's, you know, once in a while you have those life events that are great because they're kind of a feeling or a story that sticks with you. And I just had the good fortune a couple of years ago, I was teaching in Denmark at the first Scandinavian acupuncture Congress. they did something unusual, whereas most of these larger Congress have a time in the morning where all the speakers come and present for, 45 minutes or an hour about their topic, and then later they'll do a much longer presentation. That's sort of the standard. But at this Congress, they said, no, we're not doing that. We want all the speakers to come at once. Oh, and by the way, when we have those morning things where we have to speak for an hour, I always avoid them, because I go and do my hour, and I don't come and hear anybody before me. I don't stay and hear anybody after me. Because if I do that, I end up presenting my reaction to what they said. Because I'm very much a stream of consciousness lecturer. What's on my mind really biases my presentation. So if I come and I listen to an hour of somebody's talk before me, I start, but this Congress, they said, no, all the speakers have to come. They sat us all in the front row, and each person only got 10 minutes to speak about their topic. So what can you do in 10 minutes? Well, what each speaker did was get up and say what they're going to talk about later. I mean, how boring can that be? You know? So each speaker standing up 10 minutes, you know, I'm going to talk about this and this aspect later. Sit down. Well, I was sort of in the middle of the group, so, you know, 3 or 4 speakers went before me, and what I was, you know, I was saying, here he goes, he's telling what he's going to talk about. What should I do? You know, what should I do for 10 minutes? Because I don't want to do that same thing. So I started to notice that some people, you know, would stand still behind the lectern. Other people would step out in front of the lectern. Some people waved their arms. So I thought, you know, I should point this out to the group. So I get up and I said, well, I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to talk about later. Instead, I'm going to invite you to try to diagnose me. Everybody studied visual diagnosis. You can see how I am. I'm up here waving my arms. I can't stand behind anything. I mean, they gave me a mic this morning. I'm like, you have to hold that hand still to talk. I mean, it's impossible for me. You get a sense of my nature. So I said, I invite you to do the same thing now as the rest of the speakers go. Try to diagnose them. See who they are. Don't listen to what they say. After all, you know they're all just going to tell you what they're going to talk about later. So instead, you should be doing diagnose. See who this person really is. And so then the rest of the people had to get up and do their 10 minutes. And of course, they're all very experienced speakers, lecture a lot. But they'd get up, and you could see somehow they were apprehensive. And in fact, one of the speakers, he was like, you know, after Alex said that, I don't know where to stand now. Right? I disrupted their sort of internal state somehow they became very self-conscious. Right? But what was the audience? What did I invite the audience to do? Read who that person is. So it's a kind of a very important question. What internal state got disrupted in those speakers? Very relevant to our talk of spirituality. The Chinese actually have an important name for this internal state. It's called Ding Li. Li, you know this word Li is power or force. The Ding Li is the central force in the body that allows for stability. They say it's the force when all the internal dialogue of your mind has ceased. That's an interesting statement. When you cease your internal dialogue, then you have the most Ding Li, the most central force of the body. Of course, if we want to be clinical about this, it actually is the Chongmai. It's filled with blood. It's connecting the kidney to the heart. It goes through the spleen. The spleen is very set. And so in fact, in some ways, we say that the spleen regulates the Ding Li because it's the central force. We often talk about, are you grounded? You know, you see this happen. Heat goes up the Ding Li when you get really nervous. And so your voice starts to get higher, right? You start to sweat on the palms and so, you know, that's actually pericardium related. When you because the heart produces sweat, right? And as the heart produces sweat, when it's conducted out, like to the palms especially, you know, it's coming out through the pericardium meridian. So people with sweaty palms, you have to regulate the pericardium meridian. It's the connection of the heart physically outward. You know, so that's a sign that Ding Li has you know, heat is going up because I'm nervous. You know, so we can tell you when we're going to treat the Chongmai to help anxiety because it's going to bring that back down.
We hope that you have enjoyed Chapter 1 of this Alex Tiberi audio presentation. The complete 2-day seminar on CD will be available soon.